Well, good evening. It is Megan here, the faithful fibromyalgia warrior, also known as the Healing Foods Coach. It is Saturday, the 13th of June, 2026. I hope you're all doing well. It's been a while since I've done a video like this, so I thought it's time to keep you up to date and let you know everything that's been going on in my life since I've made one of these. And again, it's been a while. So, what's been going on? Well, quite a few things. I am, of course, still working full time, enjoying my job. I'm grateful for that. So that's good news. But what's changed? Well, there's been a few things. So I've been doing carnivore now for about 6 years. It'll be 6 years next week, fully, which is crazy to think about. And I have found some incredible health and healing and changes since I started going carnivore. I've lost just over 100 pounds, and I have found my fibromyalgia fog is completely gone. My fibromyalgia pain and symptoms are managed. In fact, they're almost never there. They can flare up if I'm not careful, but overall, I've been able to manage them through losing the weight, through eating carnivore, and of course, just being mindful of my levels of stress, making sure I'm doing gentle movement every day, and that always helps. Sometimes they can still flare up, which, by the way, before I get too much further, I just want to say that although carnivore has been amazing for me, and I'm so grateful I'm eating this way, it doesn't mean it can or will fix absolutely everything. Some conditions may need extra support. So people who might struggle with things like autism or ADHD or severe mood disorders, severe depression, crippling anxiety, you may still need to take medication even if you go on a carnivore diet, and that's perfectly okay. Okay. A lot of things can heal and improve when you are eating a carnivore diet, but that does not mean every single thing gets fixed. Just so you're aware of that. So I've lost a lot of weight. Completely reversed my fatty liver disease. I'm now metabolically healthy. My IBS is in remission as long as I eat clean carnivore, and a lot of other positive things. My osteoarthritis is gone. I'm not in a wheelchair anymore. Many things. Additionally, I have overcome and conquered my 30 years of battle with bulimia, and I don't feel like I'm dealing with crippling anxiety or depression any longer. I still can have moments of feeling depressed, and my anxiety still creeps in from time to time, like it does for everyone, I think, but it's so much better. So those are things that have been happening over the course of 6 years. Most recently, I've changed up how I do carnivore a little bit. Now, just to let you know, I'm not adding back in fruit or trying dairy again or anything crazy like that. I know the things I have to avoid, and I avoid them. Completely stay away from dairy. I'm staying away from fruit and all plants, IBS and all of that. And of course, the carbs cause me to have cravings and food triggers. So I avoid all that. I don't drink anything that's caffeinated. All those things I'm sticking to because I know they work for me. They may not bother other people, but they definitely set up my health in a bad way. But basically, what I had noticed, so I guess it was around 2023, I was in perimenopause, which would make sense because I'm almost 54 now. And in 2024, around January, is when I started heading into actual menopause. And I finally got through that late last year. So I dealt with the symptoms for about a year after the menopause was officially over. And what I had happened during that time, which is not unusual, as my hormones were all over the place, was that I was no longer weight stable at about 125 pounds. My weight was actually creeping up, and I got to about 138 pounds. Now, to be honest, that is not a lot compared to many women who suffer through menopause. And I think that's largely in part due to the fact I'm carnivore and I don't eat carbs, but my weight was still creeping up. And even though some of it did come off last year as I kind of got back into a more stable balance of hormones, it was still up. It was up from where I felt my best. I was still constantly feeling bloated. I was still finding a lot of lower back pain because, for me, when I'm carrying extra weight or I'm constipated, that's what triggers first is I have chronic lower back issues as well as fibromyalgia. And I have what they call SI, or sacroiliac joint dysfunction, which means I constantly deal with inflammation and pain there. So I was having all of that going on whilst going through menopause. My rosacea was like completely all over my face, and it was awful. Now, my skin is way clearer. I've been out in the sun lately, so it's a little bit red today, but generally speaking, it's pretty clear. And my sort of stiff, sore, achy back and joints, which I'm used to again with fibromyalgia, but I'm also heading into the age 54, so I think sometimes that can happen as we get older. But I didn't know what to do about my belly continually being bloated and puffy and the weight slowly kind of creeping back up again. I was eating like I thought I was supposed to. I was eating lots of butter, to help with the cortisol, lots of butter. I wasn't worrying too much about what I was tracking. I was always a restrictor or an undereater, other than those times when I would binge on when I was fully bulimic years ago. But my challenge was often restricting too much and undereating. So I ate kind of what I thought I was supposed to. So I'd have some breakfast at noon, some breakfast in the morning, and then 4 or 5 hours later, because it was lunch break at work, I would eat something again, lots of butter, and then I would have dinner in the evening, which isn't necessarily wrong, and lots of people do that. But what I realized over this past couple weeks is that I had no idea the volume, like the calorific amount of what I was consuming. It didn't seem like large portions of food volume-wise, but I was eating stuff that was highly calorific, which is not bad. High fat is the way to go. But I was eating more than I was taking in more energy than I was putting out. And part of the problem I realized, because for years I had counted calories and I had punished myself and I restricted, and I was worried for the first few years, if I did that, I would go back to my old patterns. And to be quite honest, at that stage, I probably would have. I was not in a good place mentally at that point. I was not healed enough to be able to do this from just a very clinical perspective and simply say, look, this is what my BMR is. This is how much I must be taking in, because this is what my body requires just to function when I'm at rest. Never mind walking, 15 minutes to work and then 15 minutes home. Never mind, letting the dogs out or doing housework or getting groceries done. I wasn't factoring any of that in. And so I kept myself away from doing that for far too long. Now, luckily, I can look at what I'm eating, what I'm consuming, and what my BMR is, and it doesn't trigger me, thankfully. But for years it did. So for that period, that season of my life, I couldn't do calorie counting. Essentially, the point of it was simply to say, what is my total daily energy expenditure? What is my body kind of burning off just to perform its basic functions while I'm at rest? And then what else am I doing if I'm walking 3 times a week? If I'm, you know what I mean? I needed to understand what requirements my body had for energy so I wasn't under eating, and to make sure I was getting in at least the bare minimum. Because what I had forgotten, even this far into carnivore, was that if I'm under eating, even if it's carnivore foods, and I'm not putting enough in to fuel my engine, then my body's going to simply hold on to whatever fat stores are there, because it's going into fight or flight mode. That's what it's designed to do. God in his wisdom created that way, which is brilliant. That way, if we face sudden droughts or famine, we don't necessarily waste away in the beginning, right? Hopefully by the time we get to that stage, we found a food source, So for me, I realized a couple things. One, what I was eating was every few hours. So I was keeping my body constantly in feeding mode, and it was never allowed the opportunity to go into rest and digest mode properly, which is probably why I was feeling bloated and gassy and constipated a lot. Even though it was carnivore, it wasn't because of the foods, it was because of how I was timing it and where I was taking it in, if that makes sense. And the other thing I realized was that because I was still under eating, I wasn't taking enough in to fuel my body. It would explain why partway through the morning I was starting to get headaches. And also why I would start to feel tired and have less energy than I had when I initially first started carnivore. And that that suddenly came on to me like a light bulb moment. And what I came to realize for me, and my weight was still creeping up. And you can hear stories about women, oh, it's because I was fasting and this happened, or I did this and that. Well, maybe. For me, what I came to realize is this, and these are some of the things that have changed. I realized one day that I just started to eat butter because someone suggested it was a good idea to cook with fats, especially for eating leaner cuts of meat. And I spent a great deal of time eating a lot of chicken breast because it was quick, it was pre-cooked, so it was easy to eat. And I never put the two together, that the leaner the meat I was eating, the less satiated I was feeling, the more I would have to eat. And so I thought I was doing the right thing by eating chicken breasts and, of course, eating slices of butter or cooking with a lot of butter. But unfortunately, it still wasn't enough fat for what I required for my body. And so I was eating more. And even though I might have been leaving 4 to 5 hours between when I had breakfast at home versus my lunch break at work, it wasn't enough to fully digest really what I'd eaten in the morning. So by the time lunch came, I was just putting more food in there without giving it a breather to relax. And then I'd come home and eat again. And again, it's not because it was bad food. It's all been carnivore, burger patties, sausages, ground beef, eggs for a time, and lots of butter. And those are not bad things at all. However, they were actually causing me issues, which I didn't realize. It was about 2.5 weeks ago. I had a slice of butter, I kept some at work in the fridge just for an afternoon snack. If I felt hungry, I thought far better for me to eat a bit of butter. That'll power me through till dinner time. Awesome. And it was working. But after doing that for months, I started to notice more and more that I would have butter and then I would feel kind of nauseous. And then I would often have a headache about a half hour later. And I just couldn't figure out what it was. I thought maybe I was feeling stressed. Maybe it was something to do with work. And one day I just suddenly went, you know what? Maybe I'm eating too much butter. Maybe I don't tolerate it that well anymore. I mean, to cook with it's fine, but I mean, to eat it plain, because it tastes great and I could eat lots of it. But I think what I realized is that my body finally went to the point of going, yeah, we don't want any more of this. Thank you. It was constantly make me feel nauseous. And that's not the point of having it. It was to try to make sure my cortisol was coming down and things like that. So I cut out butter 2.5 weeks ago. And actually, my gut has been much happier because of that. So I think I've cooked with it once since then. And I felt okay, but I didn't feel amazing. The other thing I've done that I've transitioned over to is 1 meal a day, OMAD. Now, again, coming from a background of bulimia and disordered eating and restriction, I had thought about it before because I know it can help jumpstart a lot of things, but I was always hesitant because I was afraid it would trigger back those old habits. So I tried to look at it clinically. And I'm happy to say that no, I've not had any of those dark thoughts in my head of, oh, don't eat. If you can go for 24 hours, go for 36, go for 48, go for 3, don't eat ever again. None of those have come in. I'm training my body to eat the calories I need, which is right. I'm building up. I should be getting at least a minimum of 1,200 calories for my BMR. Okay. Right now I'm just over 1,000. But again, I've been always such a chronic under-eater. I have to gradually work my way up or else I'm going to make myself feel sick and I don't want that. But I've been able to really go in between eating my meal around somewhere between 4 and 6, depending on my work shift. I have to adjust it slightly. But I'm kind of aiming between 4:30 and 5 as my target. Because what I find is if I eat a bit later than that, it takes me longer to start digesting. It takes me longer for my body to wind down in the evening. It takes me longer to fall asleep. And then I wake up feeling a bit more tired in the morning. So that's just my personal preference. But it's been amazing. The food noise is gone. And the other thing I realized was part of my problem. I drink lots of liquids, lots of water, and I only drink decaffeinated coffee, which has trace elements of caffeine, but negligible amounts. And I started making sure I was putting in a tiny pinch of salt. And I still take iodine drops, by the way. For me, that just helps my thyroid because I have thyroid issues otherwise. But what I've noticed is when I put in that little bit of salt, first of all, it just helps me get rid of my headaches. I wasn't getting enough salt in my diet. So pink Himalayan sea salt, just grind a little bit in, about a pinch worth, in my drinks. I don't take electrolytes. At this point, I don't need them. But before I was doing that, I was finding that my calf muscles would often get crampy, like would cramp up. And I was getting headaches on a regular basis, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I thought, oh, I'm probably not getting enough salt in my diet, which is one of the things I forgot to do, even though I had done that when I first started carnivore. So I'm doing one meal a day. And so far, I'm loving it, truly. I feel, people can talk about that food noise seems to go. And for me, it does. I get so busy and I have so much more energy and I'm so focused doing whatever else I need to do with my day, not worrying about, oh, what am I going to make myself for lunch today? What about breakfast? When do I eat? It's easy. It's dead easy. I'll get up and make my son his usual bacon and eggs for breakfast. And I'll make what I'm eating for later in the day. And then I'll just let it cool off and then put it in the fridge till I get home. Or kind of eat it a bit at work and then finish it at home. Either way, depending on how I'm feeling, if I'm hungry enough. And I never thought I would. I never thought I'd be able to. But I actually feel pretty amazing about it. And I've noticed, especially these last few days, my skin is starting to clear up even further. So my rosacea is gone like 99.9%, which is amazing. I find like my hair feels even healthy. Like my hair was great. It was healthy before I tried OMAD, but it just feels like it's even that much better. So I don't know. I wanted to share that. So it's something you might want to consider trying. For me, I decided to try it because in spite of following and being a good carnivore and following all the rules, of what to eat and when and things like that, and 3 meals and eat your butter and I did all of that. And again, for a while, it did work. There was a season where it worked and it worked really well. And then it stopped. And I think that maybe is our body telling us if something stops working, it's our body going, we don't want this anymore. We're done with it. As soon as I took out the butter, I stopped feeling nauseous. As soon as I remembered to start adding a pinch of salt with my water or with my decaf, no more headaches, no more muscle cramps. I felt great. But more than that, just having the time to feel the energy, feeling the autophagy kick in, feeling that all come because I'm not constantly feeding myself, for me has been a great change because, again, post-menopausal, but my weight was creeping up for some weird reason. Couldn't figure it out. I ate the same thing every day, didn't change anything, didn't do anything different, but my weight would keep going up. And I think the biggest thing about that is realizing that, for me at least, I need to give my body far more time in rest and digest mode than in feeding mode. And I wasn't too constant of a feeding mode, like all the time, most of the day. And my body just wasn't having enough time to digest everything between my last meal of the evening and my breakfast the next morning. So it might have been at least 6 or 8 hours, but that for me, that wasn't enough. And I wasn't getting the benefits I could have been from going longer and feeling the autophagy kick in. So I'm so thankful. I've tried it and I'm doing it now. And sometimes I'm just not hungry. I've had one evening, I think, where I ate after 6 because I just wasn't hungry until then. And that's okay too. You have to be able to, if you have family events or big dinners coming up, then maybe you work around that. But for me, it's kind of perfect. I do mine later in the day, because I want to give my body enough time to digest everything properly. So I feel good about that. And to be honest, I'm at work, my husband's at work, our son's on his own at the house. And so I don't eat breakfast with them and we don't have lunch together. We only ever see each other in the evening. And so if I wanted to push my meal to when they're home, I could. But even if I if I work till 6 at work, I'll eat at my desk at 5. And then when I get home, I just feed my son, my husband when he gets home, whatever. But for me, it's been amazing. And so far, I've lost 6.5 pounds in just over 2 weeks, which is unheard of. Okay, it's not as fast, obviously, as when I was first carnivore, when I ended up losing 100 pounds in about 7 months because I had a lot of weight to lose. It does become harder to do it as you get closer to your body's ideal weight. That's just true. But I couldn't lose it all the way I was eating. I just kept gaining. Even if it was an increment of maybe a pound every couple of weeks, my weight went up. That was almost 135, which is not an awful amount. It's just for me that I don't feel comfortable at that weight. 125 is the goal. If I get there, how I get there, I don't know. But I just wanted to share that because I found it super helpful. And for some people, like myself, as amazing as carnivore is, sometimes trying OMAD is something we need as well. And I would point out, this is likely also because being postmenopausal, my hormones are completely shifted and changed. And so it is harder to lose weight once you get out of menopause. But one of the things that may help is OMAD, 1 meal a day. Anyways, it certainly helped me. Don't know if you guys are doing that. Even 2 meals a day might be helpful. Let me know. Let me know what you think. If that's something you've tried, if that's something you wanted to try. How's it going? Any challenges? I would say the first day or two were a challenge because I had to find things to distract myself. So like when I would normally eat breakfast, in the mornings, I'm not normally that hungry. So it was easier to push food until lunch. The challenge became pushing lunch till later in the afternoon until it eventually fell just 1 meal around dinner time. So it can be a challenge and you probably want to ease into it. You don't want to just start it right away. And I took a few days to ease into it, just so you know, because then it's not as jarring. But it was really helpful for me. If you have any questions or want to know more, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, thank you so much if you've watched this video all the way to the end. You guys are fantastic, and I know it's been a long time since I've made a full-length video. Both the home computer and the laptop have packed up and died after 15 years of faithful service, so I do plan to make more videos, but they will likely be in this kind of, unfortunately, handheld mobile format, at least till that is fixed. But thank you anyways for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Like I said, if you have any questions or you want to know more, or you've done it yourself and you want to share your story, please feel free to put your comments down below. That is it. That is all for now. I wish you all a fantastic weekend. If you're football/soccer fans, I hope you enjoy the World Cup as it's kicked off. All the best to everybody. Thank you for all your amazing support, and I will be back very soon with another video. Bye for now.